Good evening, welcome family to the second edition of Food for Thought with me, Crown Royal. Tonight we're going to talk about an interesting topic that a lot of people, especially in the black community, don't find very interesting: politics. And we're going to do a little deep dive into politics and the position that you take if you are a voter. But what I really want to do is kind of like dispel certain myths about the black voter. Obviously, the media usually counts us as just one voting block, and I never could understand why they just automatically just put us in a position as the black vote when knowing myself growing up and being around different black people from even in the same area that I grew in, our politics were different. You ever notice when, if you do watch polls, they talk about uh, the suburban vote, the blue collar vote, the white male vote between 18 and 35, or the suburban mom vote. And all they when they say about black people, they just say the black vote. And a lot of that has to do with because, as many of us do know, 90% of black people vote for the Democratic Party. And it always wasn't actually that way. Um, Actually, it's only been that way like the last 50 years. When we did get the Emancipation Proclamation and we actually did get the right to vote during Reconstruction right after the Civil War, black people were Republicans. And obviously, you're probably sitting there saying, huh? Well, the Republican Party that we see today is nothing like the Republican Party of days ago. In all actuality, the parties was kind of like flip flopped. Um, Actually, right after Reconstruction, a lot of black people actually did get into public office. Uh, 16 black men were in the United States Congress, and over 2,000 black people across the country actually were in office, state level, local levels, and even in certain states and counties because of the high population of black people in those states, like for instance, North Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, uh, Mississippi, Arkansas. A lot of these, they had a lot of these cities, of course, had high black populations, somewhere over like 50, 55% black because now these slaves were free men. So, of course, when they got the right to vote, they started to actually govern themselves. We'll get more deep into that when I actually deal with the voter suppression show coming soon. But right now, I want to actually get into what are we as voters. Now, obviously, we are majority Democrats. And because we became Democrats because of Jim Crow, right? Jim Crow was put in establishment right after Reconstruction because these white folks down there started saying, wait a minute, we don't want these black folks to be governing themselves and actually have a say over cities and towns that we live in. So Jim Crow was actually passed in 1876, and that gave stripped all these black people of their voting rights, and then became everything became separate but equal. And it actually was actually Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. I'm sorry, in 1896 upheld the whole sanction of separate but equal. So now all these strides that were made during Reconstruction was taken away. So now black people lost their vote. And in a lot of cases, they when they did have still literally had the right to vote, they made it hard by having poll tax, or you had to know how to read a certain thing. These were all voter suppression ways, whereas though black people could not be in power throughout the South. And funny note to that, if you really think about it, and it's astonishing when I say it, America hasn't really been a democracy since till 1965, when the Voter Rights Act was passed. So basically, the last 55 years, America has actually been a true democracy. If you, we can all could fight that too, but on paper, because we got the right to vote. Um, so how did black people become Democrats today? Interesting that you asked. We became Democrats because in 68, right after the civil rights movement, after Kennedy and Malcolm, Lyndon B. Johnson actually getting Voter Rights Act passed by actually making a deal with some of the Southern Democrats in order to pass it, because, or what they used to be called known as the Dixiecrats, which were basically hardcore segregationists and didn't want these black folk to have these rights. They actually filibustered on in the Senate for actual several years until it actually got passed. But what Richard Nixon did in 68 was he came up with a Southern strategy. And the Southern strategy was the Republican Party actually reached out to these Southern Democrats and wanted to bring them in based on them being tired and upset about all that went on with the civil rights movement and the black people actually getting rights. So the Republican Party actually reached out to people's racisms and brought them in. So whereas though Nixon got washed into office because of he reached out to the South and said and made a lot of racist rhetoric. And once that came about for Nixon's terms, and then a lot of the Southern Democrats flipped and became Republicans, it kind of pushed black people towards the center as independents or Democrats. They really didn't know, because until 65, we really didn't get our right to vote. But we, after this Nixon in 68 and then winning again in 72, they started leaning more to the Democratic Party. This could have been considered some type of mistake, because black people were actually like free agents. And actually in 1978, Jesse Jackson, I'm going to use Jesse's name a few times. After Nixon resigned, Ford was in. He didn't do such a great job, but the Republican Party still were reaching out to these southern states and still was pushing racism. Jimmy Carter came in 76, and they realized this was a southern moderate Democrat, and he was more for more black rights, and especially being raised in Georgia and being around a lot of black people, he was a good man, and we thought as black people that he was good for us, because the Nixon regime / Ford was not good for us. This actually made the Republican Party ponder in 78, because his election was coming in 80. So in 1978, Bill Brock, who was the leader of the Republican Party, reached out to Jesse Jackson because he saw something in Jesse Jackson, and he knew that Jackson was one of these leaders that could maybe bring the black vote to the Republicans. Bill Brock, actually wanted to bring black people in. He wanted to leave that Southern strategy and actually chip away at this large voter base. And Jesse actually thought this was a good idea because Jesse felt as though black people, and I tend to agree with him, if you didn't actually belong to a specific political party, then both parties had to actually come to you with policies that would actually benefit you and your community. He felt as though if black people actually leaned strictly towards the Democratic Party, at a certain point, you would be taken for granted. Hence, how'd that work out for us? Sometimes we seem like we are taken for granted. I can remember actually growing up, and most people just went into the voting booth and they just hit all the D's. Didn't even know what their policy was, or you just knew that they were Democrats, so that's who we were supposed to vote for. I talked to people in the last few months, and it was told that's what they did. They just voted for the Democrats. They didn't know their policies. They might not even knew their name. And I say this also, every time just because somebody is of a party of you that you belong to or you ride with, doesn't mean they always or had the policies that you want. And they take you for granted, especially when they only maybe show up in your neighborhood every 4 years when it's time for election time. And partially that's our fault. That's your fault because you allow it. Let's get into the myths of the black voter. First of all, number one myth about black people as voters. People, and this is from a Washington Post article in December of 2019. And I took this one because I actually agree with it, and it gave me a lot of ideas of the way I simply feel when I thought about black voters. Most people, the number one myth is black voters are liberal. They often think that they are very liberal. And a liberal is somebody, what they would call, these is all terms we use, liberal or left, or what we call now a progressive. They believe black people are very liberal. And this is not actually true. Black voters are rather pragmatic, or they may be more and more moderate to the conservative side. And a lot of this has to do with black people don't automatically just say, I'm voting for this person because X, Y, and Z. They're more conservative and pragmatic in the sense where as though a lot of black people actually supported Hillary Clinton when Obama got in the race. And it didn't move until they saw Obama was able to galvanize the white vote. Sounds interesting? Because all through this primary season, the black vote has always been with Joe Biden. And the reason why is they seen in Joe Biden that Joe Biden could win. And that's all a lot of times the majority of black people, especially with people that's over my age and my mother's age group that's in their 50s and 60s, they just want somebody that's going to win. They don't like to take chances because they are conservative in that way, or pragmatic, which actually means we're just going to back somebody that has the ability to win. And there's nothing wrong with being pragmatic. It's actually a sensible thing to be. And most black voters are pragmatic. Being number two myth, just being black is enough. if you're a black candidate, black people are just going to vote for you. Again, hence to my first point, it's not true because most of them are just pragmatic. And if you're smart, you won't just vote for a black person because they're on the ballot, because just because y'all have the same skin don't mean they the same kin. And that's just in the same aspect of anybody that's on the ballot of any race. If you are that race, that don't mean they still have your best interest in the policies that you feel about is good for you and is good for your community. And in a lot of cases, they use that to actually get the uneducated voter to vote for that person because they're black. I tell you this much, and you can check this out on yourself for yourself. A lot of times, if you have a black candidate and they're a Republican, they never put it on any of their yard signs, or they never put it on any of their advertisement leading up to the election. You might not know that person is a Republican until you get into the voters box, or have your absentee ballot. That's preying on people's ignorance. They preying on somebody saying, "Ooh, he or she is black." I tell you now, in Delaware, this is where I'm at in Delaware. It's a black woman, Danielle Hall, running for lieutenant governor. Pictures, big signs everywhere. She caught my eye, and I looked up her politics, and she was Republican. It's never stated on any of her advertisement. It's not even on her site. When you actually Wikipedia and look down, you see that she ran for a Republican state Senate seat and lost in 2018, and now she's a nominee for lieutenant governor because, even the Republican Party's not stupid. Black is in this year. Women is in. Minorities is in. So they're going to put them on the ballot. And the crazy thing about that is that's everywhere. That's across the country. As of 2018, it was like 51 African American people in Congress. As of this year, there's over 200 people of color, specifically majority black women, running all across the country. And this is a good thing because representation is good. And the only thing way you can fix these problems is actually getting involved. Number 3 myth. This is from 45. Trump believes that he actually can get a lot of a black electorate. And it's not true. He made a statement, of course, it was some audacity saying something that he can get anywhere from up to 90% of the black vote. But you know how he always says some audacious things. Although he did get 8% of the black vote last time, and that was more than Mitt Romney and John McCain. But it's no way that he's going to be able. But he'll try to actually push a lot of people that look like us in front of us to try to play it off. Even in his convention, he had a lot of conservative black people there running and backing him up. Well, I say a lot. It was 5. And some of them had to be there because he gave them a pardon. I don't ever trust anybody showing up, testifying, and saying I'm backing somebody if they actually got you out of jail after 20 years. I'm just sorry. If you get me out of jail after 20 years, I'm gonna give you a speech and say I'm down with you. And don't get me wrong, that woman deserved to be pardoned, but he used her for his own advancement. Y'all know A$AP Rocky ain't never apologized to him or say he was down with him after he got him out that jail in Sweden. He still said fuck him. He ain't said nothing to him yet. That's how I'd have did it. Number 4 myth about black voters. And this is a big one. Goes back to 2016. They like to blame They like to blame that because black voters didn't show up to the polls in certain states. The reason why Clinton lost. This is a total myth. Did it actually contribute to the problem? Yes. But I would say maybe Secretary Clinton should have actually, I don't know, canvassed and actually went to Wisconsin at a certain point. Because maybe if she went there, maybe the 10,000 votes that were there for Obama might have wouldn't been there for her too. But she took that for granted. But in all actuality, throughout those key states in Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, all these swing states that she lost, 7 to 9 million votes were gone, and they were mostly white votes. So there were people that supported Obama that voted for Trump. They weren't people that stayed home. Those were the votes that actually showed up and they moved. So those white suburban voters that liked Obama kind of just said they threw their little hat somewhere and said, I'm gonna pick Trump this time. But they like to put that because of the black vote. It wasn't. Not even to mention, some of this comes from black suppression of the vote by different measures of ID laws and then gutting the Voters Act right from 65. So whereas though they closed precincts and they would have longer lines. A lot of these contribute to the black vote not being counted. Let's even not even to mention what happened in Georgia with their governor's race and almost 500,000 ballots being called illegal or not counted. It's a farce. Number 5 myth is saying black voters will not vote for a gay candidate. Now, the Washington Post puts this as a myth. I would say, generally, this is not a myth. And I'm explaining to you why. They use the point that Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who's a Chicago mayor, is openly gay. So they saying, and she's black, and she was voted for. They try to use the fact that Mayor Pete, who a lot of black people didn't actually support, but when they did polls, he wasn't unfavorable. He had more unfavorables with white and Latino voters. I'm going to lean to the side of Majority Whip James Clyburn of South Carolina, who actually is the reason why Joe Biden is the nominee now. He says older black voters will have a problem voting for a gay candidate because they are social conservative and they have strong religious beliefs. This is a fact, especially down south and especially in the black community. And I can tell you that because homosexuality is not as well openly hugged upon in the black community at all. I know this. I'm a black male. I know how people talk. I know how people act. And it's not. And the polls actually show it. Polls. 76% of white people, voters, said they were for same-sex marriage. Polls. 67% of Latinos said they were for gay marriage. Only 52% of the black voters said they were for gay marriage. That's a 50-50 split. And that's taking into consideration a lot of younger people the under 45 age. You don't even want to talk about my mother's generation, who's in the that's in the 60s and the 70s. No, that's not actually a myth. But let's move on to some important stuff about you so you can figure out. People often say, I don't like politics, but you don't actually know that you actually may not like politics, but you are politically, you have a political ideology. And you're probably saying, I got a political ideology. I don't pay attention to any of that. I'm not informed. I don't even care about that stuff. But, okay, but if somebody asks you your opinion about a specific thing, you have a feeling about that. For instance, what do you feel about public schools? Should you should you should public or charter schools? You know, a lot of things. A lot of people think that black people are against charter schools. They're the number one group that loves charter schools, even though charter schools actually destroy the public school system and take over your community, and they take money away from public schools in your community. But it looks like a good option because it's something that you see that your public school is not working, and let's try something different. What are you? Are you a liberal? Are you a moderate? Are you a conservative? Progressive, liberal, a progressive or a left person. That's somebody that is like myself, that's open to new ideals, that thinks that the government's responsibility to help with social programs and help to better the community. A person that's more conservative is not big on the government. They're more or less whereas though the government should stay out of things. And they think that more or less you should actually pull yourself up from your bootstraps and do it yourself. And more like people that are more moderate or like maybe like libertarians, and whereas though they want some help from government, but they really want the government really to be small, but they don't want to actually anybody to interfere with anything. They want to be free to not wear a mask. They want to be free to open carry a gun. Um, and they libertarians socially don't care about gay marriage. Whatever, they don't care about what goes on in somebody else's bedroom. They just care about what goes. They don't want the government to be regulate anything. They just want to live. Whereas though the make great America great again people are maybe what you call the far right and really conservative. I don't understand that. Personally, I don't understand make America great again because I don't remember when America was ever great for people that look like me. So when I actually hear make America great again, that means going back to the 50s and 60s and back to segregation and putting us back in our place. And you can take that however you want. That's just how I feel about it. So we as black people have a lot of different thoughts about how we feel about politics, and a lot of them may be called black conservatives. And black conservatism is something that's like a lot of religious people. A lot of the religious people are very conservative, and they just want to go to work. They want to have a nice little home. They don't they want to go to church. They want to go to Bible study, and they don't want to make no waves. And they just want to be peaceful. There's nothing wrong with that. But in some aspects, they don't want to make no waves because they don't want to make no progress. Because whatever they do have, they want to keep. And that's how we got put into the place that we are today. And I'm going to say this, the 60s gave us some type of progress, but we had a false sense of accomplishment in the last 20 years. And when Barack Obama was put in place as president, a lot of people thought that it was the pinnacle, it was the mountaintop. What did 8 years Obama get you? It got you Trump. Black people didn't get Obama the presidency. White people did. Cause we all can vote for him all you want. We vote for 90. We vote 90% all we want for a certain candidate. If you don't get, you only 13% of the population in the country. If you don't got white people to vote for, you ain't gonna win. So, was that an accomplishment? Yes. Did I feel good about it? I felt awesome about it because my children, for the majority of their lives, they grew up with a black president. But it didn't, racism and hatred and problems for people didn't stop in those eight years that we were in charge. Didn't. A lot of other things popped up. And even today, it's a lot of black conservatives out there who are actually anti-Obama and don't actually like his policies. And that's fine. Again, we are not a unilateral people. We don't have all thoughts. But I would say this about Candace Owens and about Lynn Swan or even Booker T. Washington back in the day. Y'all ever notice that you'll see Booker T. Washington's name everywhere? A lot of schools or street signs or that. Booker T. was what you would call a moderate. He was actually a Republican. And he's what the status quo, the establishment liked. So they pushed him because he was for gun rights. He was for the Negro making his own way, not looking for a handout. Whereas though the opposite was for W.E.B. Du Bois, whereas though he wrote and he stated that this country owed us for the services that was rendered during slavery. And we were being mistreated. And they were setting up systems to actually discourage us to actually get ahead. Black conservatives are against affirmative action. How do you feel about it? You may not know if you were for or against affirmative action. You know why they say they're against affirmative action? Because they didn't want quotas. Because then it's just tokens. I will argue without affirmative action, certain people wouldn't got through the door, even though they was qualified. How many times do we hear in order to get a job, you got to be better, you got to be smarter, you got to be the best, you got to exceed what somebody else would be just because the way that you look. How many times did somebody tell their children that? How many times did you get told that? Think about it. At this point right now in America, we have three senators that are people of color, African Americans. One is a Republican, two are Democrats. And this is how I name them. Uncle Tim Scott, South Carolina. He's Republican. Sometimes if you look at him, he'll look like Uncle Tom. And yeah, I mean it by that. And then you got cousin Cory Booker from my home state of New Jersey. If you know Cory Booker and you follow his politics and you know how he talks and everything else, he's your cousin. Somebody that look like me, if you black, you got a cousin that's like Cory. Smart, handsome, sweet. Everybody likes, but you just don't really trust him because he got some shit with him. That's cousin Cory. And then you got Auntie Kamala. Kamala Harris is everybody's auntie. Because I got an auntie like Kamala. And Auntie Kamala is the one that don't take no shit, got her stuff together, and you know she gonna run shit and everything is possibly going to be okay. But she deserve risk yet. 3% of the American Senate is black people. In 2020, their politics is different. I say in order for black people to actually get ahead, these things have to be from people have to get involved. Now listen, on the liberal side, we have black liberals that's holding high office. We got Mandela Barnes, who's 33. He's the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, the youngest black man to hold a statewide office of that caliber. We have Garland Gilchrist II. He's lieutenant governor in Michigan. He's 37 years old. First time a black person is high has hold that's such a high in that state. And then we have Sheila Oliver, 48, lieutenant governor in my home state of New Jersey, and actually from Peach's hometown of Newark, New Jersey. And she's the first African American to hold that statewide. All these people have been elected since 2018. What does that say? That ticket. Now, and these are progressives. These are people that want to work to actually change certain things when it comes to climate change and the social justices for minorities. Now, I gave you the rundown. Now, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. And like I said before, if you didn't see the first show, you may not agree with what I'm going to say because your politics aren't my politics, and we're not here to agree. I'm not here to confirm your life. I'm not here to affirm what you believe in. I'm going to give you my opinion, and food for thought is something that you're supposed to take home, get it off the table, and ponder and see if you fool. I'm going to say this about us as black voters. We fucked up. And we fucked up a long time ago when we gave our votes to the Democrats for the last 50 years. I'm going to come to you as this. I like to use a lot of quotes that from Malcolm X because it's a lot of stuff that he spoke is actually relative today, 50 some odd years ago. And 2 weeks ago, I was sitting around listening to the Ballad of the Bullet. And this was in 1963. 63, because the 64 election was coming up. And he talked about the Democrats and the Republicans. And he said, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a victim of the Republican Party. I'm a victim of the Democratic Party. And that's true. I'm a registered independent. I have no party affiliation. I was brought up a Democrat until I would say 16 years ago, I was a member of the Democratic Party. But I don't want to be affiliated with a party that's not affiliated with me. And that's how I feel. Now, I'd rather be an independent because I'm an independent thinker. Now, I am progressive, and a lot of the things that progressives believe in, I believe in, but I don't believe in their party. And I think we as black people have to get out of the party structure. The only way you're going to actually get power is if your vote matters. It's the only way you're going to get power. That's the only way you're going to get say. And you may be like, Well, the Republicans are for us. Fuck no, they not. Because they want voter suppression. They want you to stay home. They still spit racism. But guess what? Your friend in your face is not where your friend when they not in front of you. I say, in general, you supposed to hold everybody to the file. We messed up just like Jesse said in 78 when we because the Republicans didn't reach out for us when we were independents and we were free agents, we went to the Democratic Party. And they just shit on us and expect us to vote for them. I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. Now, in this election this year, I don't even it's not no choice for black people other than probably voting for Joe Biden. And a lot of us probably not happy about it. He a good man, but he like 78. Shit, I got a problem with somebody 78 having a goddamn remote control or the keys to the car. But what I do know about that situation is no matter who's in office, you hold their feet to the fire. And the only way you can do that is by your vote actually counting. And so you have to actually be more engaged. Like for instance, as me being a progressive, a lot of things that Biden don't that thinks about or believes in, I don't. I'm to the left of him, and the same thing with Harris, but she is more progressive than him. So what you do is and this is on state level, local level, anything. Do you even know who your state senator is? Do you know who's on your city council? What are their politics? Does it align with the way you want your family to be? That's what's important. Fuck the party. What does that mean? I'm a loyal what? Look, be loyal to your family. Don't be loyal to a political party. Because when you loyal, you get the okie doke. Malcolm said you got bamboozled. You get tricked, and it's true. I say for us, start running for local office. If you not going to run, get involved. School boards, city commissioners. You don't like the way your school's going, or the school, get on the board or commission. Show up to some meetings. Get involved. It's the only way. You can't just be ignorant to it anymore. I don't like politics. Oh my God, I don't like it. Guess what? You don't gotta like it. But you damn sure don't gotta like the way they treating you. And if you don't get involved, you don't have any say. And you have nothing to say about anything if you don't even vote. You seen that man, the bipolar guy is running for president. He's never voted a day in his life. He just finally registered for the first time. He's a Republican, which is his right. All I'm saying is this. We deserve better than just being a counted vote by the Democrats and we don't get any say. The key part about it is you have to be engaged when it's not election day, when it's not election time. Get out and go vote when it is, but when it's off elections, you got to do it. You got to write your congressman. Go to your local boards. See what's going on with your community. This is the only way that we as black voters are going to get respect. And we can do it in many different ways. But get engaged so you can have an idea what is going on with your community instead of waiting for a stimulus check or something to be passed. You can be part of that solution. Don't wait for anybody to give you freedom. Don't wait for anyone to give you and your community something that is a black agenda. I'm gonna explain to you like this what happened with the civil rights movement. That's not something that Congress came up. That was something that was grassroots. That was something that was presented to Kennedy. We came up with our own what this is what we want. That's how you negotiate when you boycotting and you protesting. This is what we want. Instead of waiting for somebody to give it, we make demands. And I challenge you to make demands for what's best for your life, your children's life, your community. And don't just be a puppet by any policy or party. One more thing about that I forgot, and I'm going to end it at this. And we are very, very susceptible to this. And religion is the same as politics. We like a person, they have certain values, we vote for them. We like that pastor, we like this reverend, we like that rabbi, they have same type of values as us. I'm following them. And I'm going to say this, for people that have faith, you follow your faith and your religion. You don't follow a man. Same thing with our vote and when it comes to politics. Don't follow a person because they're charismatic and you like them, because you don't actually dig in top of their policies. You just sit there and like, oh, he smile, family man, goes to church, 2.5 kids, dog, businessman, just that. What are their policies? Because I'm explaining to you like this. Personally, everybody screwed up somewhere. And we always, when some scandals come up about Jerry Falwell Jr., or comes out about somebody being on the Epstein plane or something to this extent, we devastated. I supported them. I believed in them. These people are just men or women. What about their policies? Did their policies do anything that was going to make you better? I don't care if somebody's cheating on their wife. I don't. I don't care if they don't go to church on Sunday. What are they doing for my community? And what are they doing to make my life better for my people? I could give a damn about their personal business. And maybe that's just because I'm a little bit more, I'm progressive, and that whole family values things and stuff like that, that don't cash my check, that don't make my taxes better, that don't make my schools better, and that don't make my kids' tuition go down. So I'm gonna leave you at that. Just look into your policies and actually get more engaged, and don't just be the myth of being, you black, you just going to be a Democrat. And that'll do it for this episode of Food for Thought. Uh, like, share, comment at the end. I'll get back to you if you have any comments. Um, Share it with everybody that you can. And if you disagree with me, comment about that. We can have the discussion. This is an open forum. But until next time, class dismissed.